In Haiti, shootings and riots by armed gangs terrorized people in several neighborhoods of the Caribbean country's capital, Port-au-Prince. In Palestine, authorities stressed that several people were killed after new Israeli bombardments in the framework of the 105th day of the beginning of the total siege on the Gaza Strip. In Uganda, delegates and heads of government of the non-aligned movement continue their debate aimed at cooperation as a response to global challenges. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Haiti, shootings and riots by armed gangs terrorized people in several neighborhoods of the Caribbean country's capital, Port-au-Prince. The Bel Air criminal gang led the main acts of extreme violence, including setting fire to the homes of residents who fled to avoid being consumed by the flames. The neighborhoods of Delmas, Croix de Bouquets, Carrefour Pen and Solinos were the main hotspots of the day's conflict, where gunfire and tire burning took place. Recently, Haiti's Prime Minister Ariel Henry warned that sowing chaos among the population is not a viable option to gain power in the country.
We asked the entire metropolitan area to rise up. The whole republic must rise up to make the Prime Minister respond. We can no longer resist the insecurity of the gangs. Nothing is working, not even the democratic institution. We want gang-free elections. The head of state is now involved in gangs. The whole country is now gang-land.
In Colombia, concluded on Thursday the third cycle of negotiations at the peace talks between the national government and the Central General Staff of the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, Army of the People, known as FARC-EP. The delegation signed the fifth agreement, which establishes a ceasefire until July 15th, which may be extended again. Likewise, the path for social participation, social environmental commitment, territorial transformations, and humanitarian, legal, and security aspects was also established. At the same time, they affirmed that they will put an end to the presumed retentions for economic purposes while the ceasefire lasts. For his part, the head of the government negotiating delegation, Camilo González, stated that the agreement set the installation of 22 local civil mechanisms aiming to reduce violence in their territories.
We had positive results in this third cycle of the peace talks because on one hand we received the report of the verification mechanism, which is very important. It gives an account of what has happened in terms of violation or prevention since September and has allowed us to trace a way to prevent new events, to install 22 local mechanisms to monitor and protect, aiming at helping to protect the population. Respect for the civilian population is always present. We are alert, and the commitment is to reduce violence in all the territories where the Central General Staff of the FARC-EP is present and in the midst of these conflicts.
Ecuadorian police seized more than half a ton of cocaine packed in banana boxes that were inside a property in the coastal province of Guayas in the southwest of the country. The institution informed that the drugs were found during a raid in the operation. 4 suspects involved in drug trafficking were arrested. A total of 666 packages of cocaine with the 888 logo were found. The police detailed that the drugs were going to be transported to the maritime port of Guayaquil, from where they would be sent abroad. In Mexico, the presidential candidate of the ruling coalition, Let's Keep Making History, Claudia Sheinbaum, presented her campaign closing at the Republic Square. Sheinbaum stated that the movement she leads is the only one that can guarantee the well-being of the population. She also stressed that she supports a project for the future of the nation that vindicates democracy, liberties, and the right of the people of Mexico to a dignified life, as well as the rights of Native people and women. Regarding the 4T project led by President López Obrador, she insisted it represents a humanist work in which businessmen, middle classes, all religions, and free thinkers can fit. She also pledged to maintain social programs like pensions for senior citizens, scholarships, and other supports.
Rest assured that I will rise to the occasion, that I will not let you down. We are setting an example to the world, and we will continue to do so.
The Panama Canal faces economic losses up to $700 million as a result of water shortages generated by the drought. A severe drought that began last year has forced authorities to slash ship crossings by 36% in the Panama Canal, one of the world's most important trade routes. The administrator of the Canal Authority, Ricardo Vázquez, estimated a possible reduction of $500 and $700 million in revenues after the decrease in maritime traffic, which compared to the previous year was reduced by 20%. The waterway stopped receiving $100 million per month in tolls with respect to the year 2023. According to records, the Panama Canal watershed is at the lowest level in its history, facing the El Niño phenomenon and being forced to regulate the river traffic.
This problem of drought is a global problem. The Mississippi, the Rhine, the Amazon, the Yangtze, practically all the world's waterways are affected, and of course, we have been saying this for several years now. The Panama Canal has a fundamental disadvantage, and it is only global sea route in the world that operates on fresh water.
Brazil took an important step towards energy sovereignty this week, announcing it will restart an important project that was nearly destroyed by Operation Car Wash. Our reporter Brian Meyer has more.
The Brazilian government has announced a $17 billion investment to resume construction of a second refinery at the Abreu e Lima plant in Pernambuco, with the goal of increasing Brazil's diesel production by 40% and generating 30,000 jobs. Construction was halted in 2017 as part of the Michel Temer administration's policy of dismantling the national petroleum company, Petrobras.
This dream is only coming true, comrades, because of a lot of fighting. It was the workers who held protests, work stoppages and strikes. President Lula, in fact, we held the second largest strike in petroleum workers' history in 2020. When we occupied paper traders' headquarters and paralyzed our activities for 21 days during the previous anti-democratic and fascist government.
In 2017, after a few executives were convicted of corruption as part of the now disgraced Operation Car Wash investigation, instead of treating Petrobras as too big to fail, which is what countries in the global north do in similar situations, the government began dismantling the company. Tens of thousands of workers were laid off, and Brazil lost its self-sufficiency in energy production. Consequently, Brazil now imports $11 billion a year in gas and diesel from the United States.
Everything that happened in this country was caused by collusion between some judges and public prosecutors who were subordinated to the Department of Justice of the United States, which never accepted the idea of Brazil having a company like Petrobras.
Profits from the new refinery are expected to fully pay back the investment cost in 18 months. Brian Meyer, teleSUR, Pernambuco.
Let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. Palestinian authorities stressed on Friday that several people were killed after new Israeli bombardments in the framework of the 105 days of the beginning of the total Israeli siege on the Gaza Strip. They added that rescue teams are working to recover the bodies of at least 4 people killed in an Israeli attack on a house belonging to the Al-Kadhimi family in the western neighborhood of Khan Yunis. Meanwhile, the occupation forces of Tel Aviv continue their heavy artillery shelling around the Al-Amal hospital in the city. In addition, local media reported that the communications blackout affecting the entire Gaza Strip has reached its 8th day and is the longest since the beginning of the Israeli offensive on the Palestinian enclave. On the other hand, also local media in Palestine denounced that locals wounded by the Israeli airstrikes were transferred to Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis, while the occupation army kept launching attacks in the vicinity amid operations of health workers. According to medical sources, about 100 civilians were killed and dozens wounded in the last 24 hours. Since last October 7th, the genocide perpetrated by Israel in the Gaza Strip has claimed the lives of 24,620 people, most of them women and children, in addition to leaving more than 60,000 wounded and thousands of people missing under the rubble. Palestinian authorities denounced on Friday the assassination of another journalist after an Israeli bombardment in the city of Gaza. The Gaza Government Information Office in a communique condemned the death of Wael Abu Fanouna, Director General of the Al-Quds Al-Jom satellite channel. This brings to 119 the number of journalists killed by Israel in the Gaza Strip since October 7th. On the other hand, the Union of Palestinian Journalists alerted that 25 members of the union resided in Gaza need urgent medical treatment abroad. In this sense, the union urged the international community to put pressure on the government of Benjamin Netanyahu to force him to facilitate the departure of these professionals. It should be noted that the Israeli occupation army has launched attacks on some 50 media outlets, including the offices of Al Jazeera, Palestine TV, the Man news agencies, and as well as the Al-Quds and Al-Ayam newspapers. Early on Friday, Israeli forces withdrew from the West Bank refugee camp of Tulkarem, leaving behind damaged buildings and rubble in the streets. Residents pick up the debris from damaged houses scattered in the streets, while essential services such as water and electricity were also collapsed. Local residents expressed their anguish and frustration at the destruction left by the departing forces. The Israeli army has raided several locations in the Tulkarem refugee camp. In a post on X, formerly Twitter, Israel called its military operations anti-terrorist actions in the camp and that Hamas fighters were still at large. The West Bank is another example of the violation of human rights in Palestine. The Palestinian Ministry of Health reported that the Zionist forces have killed 367 Palestinians in the West Bank since the beginning of the armed conflict.
The Israeli army entered the neighborhood and started destroying. They put bombs and blew out the entire roof, making the house unfit for use. Also, they damaged several houses of my family members. Everything is damaged inside the houses.
Thousands of Yemenis demonstrated on Friday in Sana'a, the nation's capital, in a sign of solidarity with Palestine and rejection of the attacks by the U.S. and its NATO allies. Mobilizations in Yemen in favor of the Palestinian cause have been held almost every Friday since October 7th, and now in addition to the recent attacks by Western forces on their nation. In turn, the armed forces of the Ansar Allah movement materialize actions on vessels operating in the Red Sea to prevent the crossing of all Israeli ships or those vessels bound for the ports. In this context, the U.S., under the pretext of securing the international maritime navigation, launched, together with the UK, attacks against several governorates of Yemen. In this regard, the Secretary General of Hezbollah emphasized that the security of the Red Sea, the calm of the Lebanon front, and the situation in Iraq depend on the end of the genocide in Gaza. In this context, several cruise companies announced that they would cancel or adjust their trips to avoid the Red Sea. Royal Caribbean said in a statement on Thursday that it had cancelled 2 cruises so far because of the situation. Also, Swiss-Italian operator MSC Cruises, one of the world's largest cruise lines, cancelled 3 voyages in April from South Africa and the United Arab Emirates to Europe due to the Red Sea crisis. The Ansar Allah movement has been preventing normal traffic on the Red Sea as a way to pressure Israel to end its siege on Palestine, which has already cost more than 24,000 Palestinian lives. We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience. You can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean, as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with teleSUR. Final short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. On Friday in Uganda, delegates and heads of government of the non-aligned movement continued the debate aimed at cooperation as a response to global challenges. During the event, delegates addressed international issues with the aim of calling for unity and improved cooperation among the group's members seeking to ratify the commitment to their country's causes. In this regard, summit participants also affirmed that the group remains an important organization for discussing global issues such as food insecurity, health, climate crisis, and terrorism. Uganda's president on Friday became the new rotating head of the non-aligned movement, a post previously held by his Azerbaijani counterpart. During the 19th summit of the non-aligned countries movement, the representative of Cuba ratified the condemnation of the genocide against the Palestinian people, representing the G77 plus China. The Cuban Vice President Salvador Valdés intervened in the opening day of the event, where he made proposals to put an end to the aggression in Gaza. Therefore, the proposals were the immediate ceasefire, international protection, the holding of an international peace conference, and the entry of Palestine as a full member of the nations. He also insisted that cooperation and solidarity are key to face the current challenges of the world.
Cuba suggests the non-aligned movement being consistent with the historical support to the Palestinian people. The non-aligned movement should, as I said, carry out without further delay 4 practical actions as a contribution to the efforts intended to halt the current act of barbarism. 1. Call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and the rest of the occupied Palestinian territories in all possible forums. 2. To support the urgent dispatch of international protection mission authorized by the UN General Assembly to the Gaza Strip, with a key mandate to guarantee the security and protection of the civilian population and facilitate the delivery of emergency humanitarian aid, including water and foodstuffs.
Vice President of Cuba, Salvador Valdés, said that his nation advocates the vision of the non-aligned countries movement to seek integration as a mechanism to promote equality and equity.
I reaffirm Cuba's commitment to international fraternal cooperation, in particular South-South cooperation, based on mutual respect, selfless assistance, and complementarity. Despite our limited resources and the brutal blockade that we have faced in Cuba, we shall maintain our cooperation with other countries in need to the extent of our possibilities, following our principle of sharing with modesty what we have.
In Berlin, Germany, vehicles blocked roads for the second time this week as truck drivers held a protest on Friday. The week began and ended with a long queue of vehicles in the road in front of the landmark Brandenburg Gate, with drivers tooting their horns in protest, farmers first on Monday and truckers on Friday. Government plans have included increasing taxes for farming solutions and cutting subsidies for agricultural products. Farm workers expressed they would prefer not to rely on subsidies, but warned that without them, many would lose their trades and Germany would have to increase its volume of imports. After previous protests in Berlin in December, the government watered down plans to cut subsidies for diesel and farmyard vehicles, but lobby groups are calling for them to scrap them entirely.
It's like the farmers. The barrel hasn't just overflowed, it exploded. The toll increase affects the entire population. It's not just the transport and logistics industry, it's everything that affects the population. 85% more tolls, and most of that goes to the German railroad company, which means basic food, medicines, everything will be more expensive, everything that is transported. And if that's not a reason to take the streets, then I can't think of anything else.
The United Kingdom government announced the dismissal of 2,800 steel workers following the closure of blast furnaces at the Port Talbot plant. The Indian company Tata Steel reported that the British government made an investment of $634 million to switch from coal-fired blast furnaces to electric arc furnaces, leaving more than 2,800 workers unemployed. It was stated that legal consultations would be initiated as part of a plan to restructure and transform the headquarters in Wales. In this sense, the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak justified the government investment with a commitment of his administration with the steel production. This plan is intended to reverse more than a decade of losses and transition from the legacy blast furnaces to a more sustainable green steel business. We have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.